This lesson shows how to multiply and simplify radical expressions. A radical expression is simplified when the following statements are true. The radicand has no perfect squares, the radicand has no fractions, and there's no radicals in the denominator. For this lesson, we'll concentrate on removing perfect squares from the radicand. For this lesson, there are two basic properties that are used to simplify radical expressions. The first property says you can factor perfect squares out from under the radical. The second property is the product property and says you can split the product under the radical sign. In other words, the radical of the product is equal to the product of the radicals. For example, for this expression, split the product into radical 25 times radical x. Then radical 25 equals radical 5 squared. So using the first property, factor 5 out from under the radical, and you have 5 times radical x. Once you understand these properties, you can simplify the process. Split the product into radical 25 times x. Then since 25 is equal to 5 squared, factor out 5, and x stays under the radical. The final answer is 5 times radical x. However, the product property runs both ways. You can also combine the product of two radicals. For example, in this expression, notice neither radical 2 nor radical 6 alone can be simplified. However, if you combine the product under one radical for radical 12, the expression can be simplified. Factor 12 into 4 times 3. Then since 4 is 2 squared, factor out 2, and 3 is left under the radical. The simplified form of the expression is 2 times radical 3. For this example, combine the product of the two radicals for 2 times radical 3 times 3 times 5. Then 2 factors of 3 is 3 squared, so factor out 3. And 5 is left under the radical. Finally, multiply 3 times 2, and you have 6 times radical 5. Notice when you combine the product of the radicals, you don't have to multiply 3 times 15 equals 45. Just combine the factors of 3 and 15. For this example, combine the product under one radical. Combine x to the 2 and x to the 3 for x to the 5. Then factor 10 as 2 times 5, and split x to the 5 into x times x to the 4. Then 2 factors of 2 is 2 squared, so factor out 2. X to the 4 is x squared squared, so factor out x squared. 5x is left under the radical, and the final answer is 2x squared radical 5x. For this example, combine the product of the two radicals. Factor 35 into 5 times 7. Then 2 factors of 5 is 5 squared, so factor out 5. X to the 6 is x to the 3 squared, so factor out x to the 3. 7 is left under the radical, and the final answer is 5x to the 3 radical 7. For this example, combine the product of the two radicals. Multiply the coefficients. 2 times 3 equals 6. And factor 14 into 7 times 2. Then 2 factors of 7 is 7 squared, so factor out 7. Factor out x squared as x, and 2x is left under the radical. Then combine 7 times x times 6 for the final answer, 42x radical 2x. This lesson showed how to multiply and simplify radical expressions. And this lesson was brought to you by the Math Fun Academy. Its continuing mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new math and new equations, to boldly go where no student has gone before.